Hiya, it's just Mrs. Truman again. Okay, so in my previous video, we looked how we would plan for an exam question. I'm now going to show you how A, our big question, B, our planning, all kind of fit into forming a response. All right, so firstly, our big question is, and the note we make in our big question is extremely important, all right, and it's an extremely good revision tool, which is why we're asking you to do them. So it's obviously relevant to recap the notes on the big question. I'm not going to do that with you. I've expected that you would have done that before now, but I do want you to see how I use what I've written here in the response. Now, what I've done for you in the response that I've written is I've literally just did the introduction. I haven't went into an analysis. I've literally written the introduction of my response that would then hopefully help you to move into writing a response. And like we spoke about previously when we looked at the last big question, it's always important to make reference to context. And the main reference that I'm going to make, certainly in the introduction, is this idea that the witches are catalysts for the main events. And they were certainly seen as symbols of evil. And due to how witches were viewed in the era and the interest that King James I had in them, they were linked to these ideas of death and disaster. I'm then going to go on and talk how I actually are going to structure my response, okay? So I'm giving a brief introduction to the formation of my response. Okay, so I'm going to just I'll highlight the relevant contextual information I'm including. I'm going to just do that in pink. So it says the role of the supernatural is extremely significant in Macbeth, all right? So I've got a clear link to the question. I've then said, at the time when the play was written, King James was on the throne. So again, I've got some reference to context. I'm just touching on it there, though. King James himself, but also most of the members of society had a great, had a great interest in witches, bordering on hysteria. So again, I'm just taking that a little bit further. With witches most commonly associated with death and disaster. Being symbolic of evil in society, they were seen as extremely interesting to theatre goers, including King James himself. And we know that one of the reasons why they may be included is because Shakespeare actually did want the king there within the theatre. Now you can see the reference to context what I've made. I haven't just said that King James was interested in them. I've said, well, why? What was this hysteria? Why was it? Because actually, well, yeah, they were associated with death and disaster. They were synonymous with evil at the time. I've then now moved on to looking at the role of the supernatural and witches in the play, which is then linking into my response. So I've said, in the play Macbeth, Shakespeare uses the characters of the three witches to show the power of the supernatural. Now, I'm going to use a different colour for that one because I'm actually now making reference to the writer's methods, the idea that he uses the characters of the three witches and he uses them to show the power of the supernatural. And the idea of showing the power is the main focus of my argument. Not only are they catalysts for the main events, so again linking to methods there of the play, they are presented in a way of combining and connecting the natural and non-natural world, with the audience seeing this through the first encounter with the witches in Act 1, the second when they are met by Macbeth and Banquo, and finally when Macbeth goes to see the witches in the extract provided. So what that allows me to do in terms of the structure of my response is I've guided myself in terms of how I'm going to respond to it, okay? It is really important, and I say this time and time again, is when we're looking at an extract, think about what comes before and afterwards. And it's structure your response in that way, okay, in that chronological way, will help you massively in an exam because it will help your train of thought. You're not jumping from the end of the play to the beginning of the play to the middle of the play. You're taking it from the beginning and then you're filtering it through. And again, that links very closely to the reference that I made in my planning. Okay, so you can see I'm making reference where it says Act 1. My planner makes reference to Act 1, and then it makes reference to Act 3, okay? And I can also talk about Act 2 within there. All right, so a brief introduction, but again, it does tick a lot of boxes. The only thing it's not doing is going into our analysis, which would be the next stage of your response, okay? If you do want to know how to actually start an analytical response, please watch my next video, because I'm then going to go through that with you. Okay, thanks again.